All right, let's jump into our next segment today, and we will do this all season long, but we talk about what we're convinced of. And so today we are each going to share about a team that we are convinced of. And so as I was doing a little research today, it hit me again that I'm convinced the Las Vegas Raiders are going to provide surprising value to your fantasy teams this year. I am convinced you should buy in. I'm convinced that Gardner Minshew can deliver fantasy production. Like, he's not necessarily great as a starting quarterback on your fantasy team, but he throws the ball. He gets other guys involved. He keeps the offense moving. I don't think the Raiders are going to be very good. I don't think they're going to win a lot of games. But guess what? They're going to have to try to score with the Chiefs. They play them twice a year. The Chargers twice a year. The Broncos should be better with Sean Payton in year number 2. And so the Raiders, and they were okay last year, and I don't think they're going to be much better. They'll probably be similar to what they did last year. Antonio Pierce now taking over second year officially as the head coach. But here's who I'm targeting. Zamir White. I'm convinced Zamir White showed us what he's capable of at the end of last season when he ran all over defenses, coming in with fresh legs for Josh Jacobs. Throughout the training camp preseason, nothing has changed. Zamir White is the Raiders running back. And we talk about, man, are there any bell cows anymore? Are there any guys that you can really, rely on to get enough volume? Zamir White, he's set. Let's go. Alexander Mattison, I'm not worried about him. Zamir White will carry the Raiders this year, and I think he can carry your fantasy team, and you can draft him as a running back 3, and I think he'll deliver maybe running back 1 value. I'm convinced of that it'll be close to running back 1 value, and he will be an absolute steal for you. And then also Jacoby Myers, someone that I pounded the table for last year. I'm back in on Jacoby Myers. He delivered, and I think him and Gardner Minshew will find a connection, and he'll have a nice year as well. So there you go. That's what I'm convinced of. What are you convinced of today, Tripp?
Yeah, well, I'm on board with that one and Zamir White for sure. I mean, I think if all I knew about Zamir White was his height and weight, that would be enough. He is a true bell cow. He's going to get a ton of carries. Now, I happen to think that he's also a pretty good running back, but he's going in the 20s right now in terms of ADP with running backs. So I think you're going to be really happy with your return there. I am convinced that last season was more like the floor for the Jacksonville Jaguars than the ceiling. What I mean by that is I think the Jaguars were almost in the playoffs last season, and I think we remember them as a sort of pretty good middle-of-the-pack team. I think, in fact, they're much better than that because I believe that Trevor Lawrence was injured for most of the season last year, and probably more so than we knew. He had that little ankle injury, but I think there was a lot of stuff going on health-wise with Trevor Lawrence. I think that they were trying to figure out the sort of Calvin Ridley experiment and what to do there. And in the middle of all that, Christian Kirk got hurt. I think they knew that ETN was their best running back. But do you remember in the preseason last year, they were talking up Tank Bigsby and how he was going to sort of relieve ETN. And then when the season started, I think they were just like, let's give this guy the ball as much as we can. And they didn't really do that. And what happened with ETN? He faded down the stretch a little bit. He was spectacular for the first 12, 14 games of the season. So I think Lawrence is healthy this year. I think that Christian Kirk is healthy this year. Evan Ingram is the guy actually that I would target there. I mean, I think Evan Ingram, I'm seeing he's creeping up draft boards a little bit, but he's going somewhere around the tight end 10. And I think there's a pretty good chance that Evan Ingram is one of the top 5 or 6 tight ends this season. I feel great about Ingram, great about Christian Kirk. I feel good about ETN. He's being drafted kind of where he deserves to be drafted. But Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 16 in ADP. I'm happy to have Trevor Lawrence as my QB1. Maybe that's going to come back to haunt me. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars last year was kind of the worst. Well, okay. Last year, except for the Urban Meyer season.
The Urban Meyer disaster.
So maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot with that point. But I don't think that last season was the norm for them. I think they were more injured and more kind of discombobulated than we realized.
Yes. No, I think the Jags are going to be way better. And I'm convinced Trevor Lawrence is a starting quarterback for your fantasy team. I really believe that. I'm waffling on which weapon, who I want to draft and when, because I've gone back and forth. I've been waffling on Evan Ingram because I think that he can do it, but I'm also a little hesitant as well, just because there are going to be multiple guys there. Gabe Davis You didn't even mention him.
I can't quit Gabe Davis.
No, now he's there, so he'll have some big pop weeks. So who's going to be the most consistent? Will it be Christian Kirk, who's usually kind of the most reliable, kind of that he's been that go-to guy many times, and he's always overlooked. Like, he's had such a great career, but he's never been like the upper echelon guy. So maybe his floor is a little lower. So if depending on how you're constructing your roster, if you want a steady guy, I think Kirk can be your guy. But then, man, you look at Brian Thomas Jr., he's going wide receiver 49.
He's making some noise in camp, man. I mean,
he could way exceed that.
Yes. Yeah.
I
agree with you.
I want some Jags. It's just going to depend on like who falls. Depending on what draft I'm in, I'm just going to take the guys that fall.
Right.
Because there will be certain leagues where everybody doesn't like the Jags, right? It's just sort of, they're one of those teams where it's easy for people to be out on based on last year. They don't have as much kind of hype coming off of last season. So anyway, I think you can get some good value for those guys.
You tell me I'm about to draft in my home league, and then I can get Zamir White like late round 5, mid round 6, and then I can take Trevor Lawrence in the 8th or 9th round. That's a team that I feel pretty good about, with Zamir as like my RB3 and Trevor Lawrence as my QB1 that I didn't have to take until round 9. You know, I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. And one final thing to add to the Raiders. How about Brock Bowers? I saw this today on Football Guys. He's lining up all over the place and exceeding lofty expectations. So he's come in with hype. And if he's exceeding expectations, at least in camp, I like the sounds of that. And I'm actually surprised he hasn't gotten more. I haven't heard a lot of hype for Brock Bowers. And so we saw last year, you can see the young tight ends come in and have an impact. Sam Laporta did it. So it's possible. Now, the Raiders, people are, Gardner Minshew. I think Minshew can make this happen. And so I'm also convinced he's beating out Aiden O'Connell. Give me a break. Come on. Minshew's got it.
I mean, they were a dropped pass away from making the playoffs last year with Minshew. Yeah.
Well, he was with the Colts.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The Colts last year, I think they dropped that pass in like the final game that would have gotten them a first down. I mean, they would have been in the playoffs. So I think Minshew is a legit mid-tier quarterback now. He's not my starter in fantasy, but he can hold up quality players on a real life football team. So.
Absolutely.